You ready?
We're going to be calling, we're going to be going motion or together and coughing together.
Call to order the City Council regular meeting for the City of Wyoming, Minnesota, April 4th, 2023. Let the record reflect, we do have a quorum. Member Onstad, Member Schilling, Member Yeager, and Mayor Iverson are present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry.
This thing is so small.
All right, open forum. Anybody? No, okay, so we'll pass that. Approval of minutes, number 1, consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for March 21st, 2023. If there are no questions or comments, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Schilling. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. We'll move down to the consent agenda, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Does anybody wish to pull an item from the consent agenda for more discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve consent agenda item number 2, 3, 4, and 5?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Schilling. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Acknowledgement receipts of reports of officer boards, commissions, and department heads. Number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Is there anyone who wishes to pull a report from the department heads? Hearing none, we'll move on to communications. Number 11, Wyoming Police Department body-worn camera program audit results. Chief Bauer, is that you?
That's me.
Okay.
Mayor Iverson and members of council. I'll start with just we have a presentation up in front of you as well. I'll just do a quick run through on the results of the audit that was done at the end of 2022. We just got the results a couple weeks ago. Next slide. Just for a little history on the body-worn camera program, just so everyone's kind of familiar where we're at with it. They were originally purchased in the end of 2020. Full implementation where everyone was using them was the end of 2020 as well, Q4, which then puts us at a 2-year biennium where an audit is required, and I'll get into more about that. We use a body-worn camera system that's through Axon. It integrates with our evidence storage, which stores all of our digital photos, videos, documents, anything that we receive. And also the TASER is also an Axon product, so they all connect well together. It is a very robust, reliable system. Very happy with the product. We've had no issues, other than just usual technology stuff, but overall it's been a really good system. Very happy with it. The cops love it. Saves us. If you get a complaint, it's a really good way to resolve those complaints along the way. Not that we get that many of them to begin with, but our contract started in 2020 and is a 5-year contract. So we'll be looking at what we would like to do for that next 5 years in 2025. So just kind of put that in the back of your heads. That's our timeline. Next slide, please. Just so you have an idea of what we're talking about, it is a device that attaches to jacket, belt. Mine's right here right now. It activates by pushing a button on the front. It also is activated by if a handgun is unholstered, and it also is activated by pulling a taser out of your holster as well. There's a little trigger device on there that it does sense that it's taken out, and it activates the body-worn camera. It also activates with, if you have a squad camera system, so the camera's in the squad, it's activated with those as well. So even if a squad drives by you and has theirs on and yours isn't on, from another agency that also runs Axon body-worn cameras, ours will turn on as well. So very sensitive, a really great system. The only kind of limitation to these, it would be that if you're driving in a vehicle, you're looking at a steering wheel, essentially. So that is a limitation, that it is just the nature of a body-worn camera versus having a squad camera system. Next slide, please. Is it you? Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong person. Yeah. The audit requirements, I'll just touch base on what the requirements are. So Minnesota state statute requires every 2 years that an audit is done by an independent organization. The Chiefs of Police Association recommends the company that we went with, Rampart. They are specialized, they do really good work with smaller agencies as well. They charge per body worn camera that you have. So it allows us to scale the audit depending on how many cops you have or how many cameras you have. Essentially, the audit looks at whether or not we're classifying things properly based on the nature of the call. It looks at how the recordings are used, whether or not they're used, make sure they're used appropriately. If they're purged on the appropriate timeline, making sure the system's set up properly to do that. Evaluates making sure that people aren't accessing this data. Data is what they call recordings. Making sure that people don't have access that shouldn't. And also if they're being shared properly with other departments. So if we have, Chisago County Sheriff's Office wants to view our body-worn camera for a investigation, we can share that with them. We just have to do these things in a proper way. It also reviews any policies that are related to your body-worn cameras. So that's kind of the scope of what the audit, and that is all defined by statute. And then it also requires that the results are presented to the governing body, which is you, and just to make sure that we don't have, it's your determination, just to make sure there's not a substantial misuse of the system at that point. As far as our policy goes, the existing policy that was initially presented to council, very minor changes were made, just some language changes, just like it was a may to a shall, and then there was a change made to adjust to reflect our practices of doing random audits of the recordings. It was being done, it just wasn't reflected in policy. And then it needed to be more visible on the city website. You had to search for body-worn camera in the search bar. You couldn't find it any other way. Now it is more visible on the city website, so you can find it much easier. Go ahead, next slide. So now you can see, it's really small up there, sorry. Over on the police policies and publications, you can see that's where it will be. Go ahead, next slide. I'm sorry. So you can keep this slide. So that it's much more visible. You can find it on the city website. Just so you have an idea of, if you have questions about the retention of these recordings, generally these are all dictated by the record retention schedule for Minnesota cities. It's not us making those decisions. We just look at it and say, all right, where does this fall within this schedule? And then we set those parameters based on that. So we did cut down the number of categories. There was way too many categories. It was just too many options. And that's kind of how these systems go. You start with too many, adapt over the years. So we changed it to this. Which allows us to retain the things that we need to for a certain period of time. You don't want to retain things longer than you have to for storage purposes. I mean, these are huge files. You can end up with way too many things being stored. And also just, if you have it, it is discoverable as well. Like if it's retained for eternity, it allows, people have if you have it, you have to release it. So that's why we have these in place, and it allows us to manage all of those type of things. Let's see, next slide. Essentially what the auditor did was we had to provide a list of all of the case numbers for that 2-year period. He selected a random sample of 132 cases that he came in, met with Callie, our evidence technician, said, okay, this case, pull up the video, see if it's there, making sure that it was purged appropriately on the time. Most of them were no longer retained because the default is at 90 for a lot of them, so they were appropriately purged. The ones that were supposed to be there were retained as needed. We were overwhelmingly compliant with that. There was a couple exceptions where someone had forgotten to activate their body cam as they get out of the vehicle on a call. Those are the only exceptions, just a handful out of the 132. So, and just, considering it does require you to activate it manually, there's going to be that. You're going to have a couple along the way that it just doesn't happen. So, go ahead, next slide, Alex. So in all, the assessment of the auditor that we were substantially compliant with state statute. We, made a couple changes based on this, and that's what these audits are good for, just making sure that we're staying up to speed with what we need to be doing, staying compliant with state statute. And overall, feel really good about where we're at with it, and it's a really good program at this point. Any questions by council?
Yeah, I'll start. So first of all, congratulations on, this is the first audit, correct? I think you said that? Congratulations on that. I think that's wonderful. Just a couple things. You had mentioned Exxon or the company, and it will go off or on when you go buy some other vehicles that have it in different cities or whatever. Jurisdictions, I guess is probably what I'm saying. Which counties are those? Is it Chisago County, and then is it local
So,
lakes?
State
Is it-
Patrol, any of those that have the same Axon system. I don't recall if Lakes area has the same system or not, but Chisago County State Patrol,
Okay.
they
So
all, yes.
people we back up, we also back up
Yes.
Forest Lake?
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
all right, cool. And then, Rob, this might be more for you. Did we get the cameras on grant from Hallberg's, or were they helping to pay? I'm trying to remember how Hallberg's,
They did the initial purchase of the actual camera and the system for it. We did, not the contractual agreement we have with Axon, but the initial startup of the camera process was a donation from the Hallberg Family Foundation.
okay, perfect. And then, do we know what the fee is gonna be in 2025?
We don't. I mean, the 5-year cost for the contract was $50,000. There's a lot more on the front end when you purchase that initial equipment. You did elect to do at 2.5 years, they replace the cameras, and then at 5 years, they replace the cameras. So at that 5-year period, we would have new cameras at that point, which is also, now you're hooked. So, at that 5-year point, but they don't, that's too many years down the road, they won't tell us what the
Yeah.
annual cost will be.
Okay, all right, so we're budgeting for it.
Yeah, right
is what
now
we're doing.
it's just under $7,300 a year. I would anticipate it would go up, but I'm not sure at that point what it would be.
Yeah, that's all the questions I had. Member Onstad?
How many cameras do we have? And do we have extra?
No, there's no extra, there's 10.
Okay.
So if necessary, mine, if for whatever reason we have to ship one back, they're really good about the turnaround. Mine could be used, mine isn't used as often, so we could, but we don't have extra, no.
Yeah, these are great cameras. I wear one at work.
Yeah.
I've seen the software that they have, that in an event, multiple cameras can be stitched together. They're all timed together, so you can see an event from every angle of every officer that's
Sure.
involved. They're a great system.
Yeah.
So if you're wearing yours and they have theirs on, yours can go off or theirs can
My
go off?
department won't, because we don't have we have the same cameras.
Yeah.
We just don't
Have
have,
the same software.
yeah, theirs triggering
Oh,
won't
okay.
trigger ours.
Okay.
I don't believe,
Okay,
unless you come into the jail.
Sure.
Maybe, I doubt
Yeah.
it though.
okay, perfect.
It might, we don't have guns, so we don't have those triggers.
Sure, right.
But I can imagine everything else is probably gonna be the same, and it was great training that they had too.
All right. Member Onstad asked a question and it kind of triggered something for me. How many have we had broken in the last 2 years or had to send in?
I would say maybe one since I've been here last year and a half. They're
Okay.
very rare.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
they're-
And turnaround was quick?
Yeah, and like I said, they want us to, as a part of our contract, they will send it, every 2.5 years, you get a new camera, so.
And if something breaks, they warranty it?
Yeah,
You
it's
don't have to?
part of that contract,
Oh.
yes. Yep.
Fabulous. Okay, that's all my questions. Member Yeager?
No questions.
Member Schilling?
No questions. I'm just very happy with the results of the audit.
Yep,
So
me too.
appreciate
Thank
it.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to 12, the Wyoming Police Department 2022 Annual Report. Chief Bauer, I'm assuming you're
Still
on.
the Neil show, sorry.
It's still, well, we're okay with that. I think you got off last
I did,
time where you
last
didn't-
couple, I haven't had
Yeah,
anything,
so it's
yeah.
all yours.
All right, thanks, Alex, appreciate it. Okay, first, just to give you a quick overview of what I'm just gonna touch base on, obviously, the paper document has more detail. I'll just touch base on the calls for service and policing activity, a little bit of the enforcement statistics. We could spend all night on NIBRs, I don't think anyone wants to hear that. Training and development, we'll talk a little bit about community outreach, the wellness initiative, 2022 staffing status, and just a couple more audits that we did. Go ahead, next slide. I think this is probably one of the most interesting ones, so I get you on the beginning here before you lose interest. This is it could get long, you never know, right? Yeah.
I'll cut you off,
Yeah.
so we're good.
I know, got it. So this just gives you a better better understanding of how we're allocating our, not necessarily our time, but our calls and our incidents that are generated. So if you look at the total incidents for 2022, 2021, 2020, last year was 13,793 incidents, which isn't a great summary of what we did, because there are so many other aspects of that. If you look at actual calls for service, where someone's calling 911, someone's calling our office for an officer, or it's something that an officer comes upon and initiates, or someone comes in here and makes a report, those are the things that you would think of as generally as what a calls for service would be, and that's about 4570. So that's a very, it's not even half of the total incidents that are associated with in our records management system as being something that we're involved with. Proactive incidents, I think this is really incredible for the size of our department, the number of traffic stops that they're conducting, the area checks. That would be, an area check means that they're stopping out, taking time to check something that's not a park, not a business, might be an area that we've got a complaint on, but they're dedicating some time to it. It's not just flying down the road at 40 miles an hour. They're spending some time just checking, making sure everything's okay. They pull an incident for that. Business checks, same thing, getting out, checking doors, making sure there's no signs of forced entry. A lot of those are done overnight when there's a lot less calls for service. The night officers are doing a lot of business checks. Park checks, same thing. They're checking parks, making sure there's no vandalism, no damage in the areas, and then some residence checks along the way as well. So if you look at that, that's 7750 in 2022. That's a huge portion of what our officers are doing, that kind of proactive work. Administrative incidents breakdown is administrative details. This is, they're doing training, they're out doing online training, they're doing something else administrative. It also includes fingerprinting at our office. Anything like that, that's just not necessarily your typical police-related issues, but they still pull an incident for it. 82 community policing, so some of those are the ones that we'll talk about. Other ones are, they're actually stopping out in the park, having conversations with people, those type of incidents. That's 82 of those. And then 11 speed trailer deployments. This is the first year that we started tracking where and when and how many times we're deploying that speed trailer. So that was a new addition in 2022, so I don't have information for the previous years on that. Overall, you can see, the total incidents are increasing the last 3 years. 2020 was obviously, an anomaly. I don't know, your 2019 numbers are higher than 2020, but in general, you can see that our calls for service are gradually increasing along the way. A lot more proactive incidents generated in 2022, a lot more traffic stops and along those ways too. So maybe I'll pause there if anybody has any questions on this.
I just have a statement. You brought it up 2019. I was curious because the one that stands out to me is traffic stops. We
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of people out driving around in 2020.
No, right.
We kind of locked everybody in a
Yep,
cage, so.
right. So that's a big contributor.
why I
So
was
2019, your numbers are closer to 2021.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
in general.
Chief Bauer, the traffic stops, just a couple questions. Or one is a statement. Obviously, we have more members in the community, so that could be part of the increase. Do we know, is it broken out somewhere? If you're a data guy, you probably know this. What are ones that are more residents versus outside of Wyoming? I don't even know if you can break it down that way.
I don't have that. It would be the courts.
Okay.
I can look in and see if that's a data point they can pull.
I just think it would be interesting
right.
to know how many is like outside of what our residents are.
What are you hoping for?
I'm
No.
actually that it's less residents than it is for people that are, at Member Schilling's house or whatever.
Well,
There it is.
That's an anomaly, yeah.
They're always there.
So that's all. I think that's kind of interesting. And I want to point out the business checks. Super important, so
Right.
really appreciate that, that's being done. And we all know Parks needs as much checking as possible, so thank you for pulling those out. Any other questions before we go on?
Could some of our lower numbers also be due to staffing, that we were lowering staffing for a
You
period of
know,
time there?
Not, I don't know where it was 2020, where we at for staffing, I'm not 100% sure on that. I mean, 2020 was just, like I said, it was, I don't know that I want to include that in any kind of assumptions with 2020, it just was so
Yeah.
odd, so.
Okay, all right.
All right, next
No other
slide.
questions? Thank you.
Getting into your traffic stop question there, this is just a little bit of a breakdown of what the disposition was of those traffic stops. So those 1,973 traffic stops, officers always have the discretion on how they're gonna handle that, okay? They can issue a verbal warning, written warning, they can write a administrative citation for some very limited number of offenses. Speed is one, but there's very few that they can write administrative offense. Those don't go on someone's driving record. There's regular citation that people think about. That is where you have a court, you can go and make a court appearance. That is an option. Those do go on your driving record. 2% would be arrested. That's usually gonna be like someone that is, has a license violation that they fail you to appear for court on a regular basis and they get transported to jail to be booked on that, or a DWI arrest. Other would be, it end up being a public assist or something like that. So that's what that other would be. So predominantly, 78% is a warning. I'm perfectly comfortable with these numbers. This is that 78%, it's a really good way for us to build community relationships. Making the contact. I'm really glad that they're out there doing the traffic stops. But it also is a way for us to build that community collateral as well along the way. And saving those citations for when it's important.
Is there any record, so somebody gets pulled over and they're warned, how many of them actually get tickets because they didn't listen to that warning? Do we know? Can that keep track of that?
We would know that just within Wyoming, not elsewhere.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I understand with our officers, I mean, you pretty much know the people you deal with on a regular basis.
Sure.
And you remember the people you saw
Sure.
periodically.
Yeah.
In a community, even a larger community.
Right.
So.
Any other questions on that? Go ahead, next slide. You're already there. I just thought this was interesting data point to take a look at. This was where the traffic stops were conducted. I just wanted to see kind of where they were focusing their attention. I would not interpret this to mean that there is more violations in these areas necessarily, okay? This has to do more with traffic volume and especially Forest Boulevard. I would, where are people driving overnights when there's no calls coming in? They're driving on Forest Boulevard. So that's what they're looking, our night officers are conducting traffic stops. That's predominantly where these Forest Boulevard traffic stops are coming in. East Viking obviously is one that we receive a lot of complaints on, and they're out there dedicating that much time to it. Wyoming Trail, I think partially is just because it's our come and go way, that you end up, and it does, the speed does decrease as you get closer into town. And, there's those areas that people might not be paying attention to that. Good View, and then Kettle River.
That's my least.
I
Good.
think we
Sorry.
should just leave that alone, right?
I suppose they think there aren't any police on Goodview as they're coming across, would be maybe
It's an-
my guess.
It's an interesting
I think
road.
it's
Or
just.
they're
'cause
drinking in
It's
the-
a really wide roadway to
Yeah.
be that speed limit. So
Oh, okay.
it ends up being where it feels like you can drive faster than the
Oh.
posted speed limit, and people are, regardless what you stick on a sign,
Yeah.
they're going to drive what they feel.
Yeah,
So, it feels like it should be faster, and then people do it, and then
Yeah.
that's where we come into that problem.
yeah,
So,
okay.
any questions on, then just a point to bring out here, 47 intoxicated drivers removed from Wyoming roadways. I mean, I'm really proud of them. That's, a lot of that is, Jack at night, he's really into doing DWI enforcement and has been recognized for that, so.
That's great.
Any other questions on that? Okay, there's a lot more detail in the actual annual report. Just to give you an idea of kind of the actual crimes that are reported to NIBRS, and that NIBRS is that system that collects, that we feed our crime data into. And this is recently, well, the last couple of years, this is the system that the majority of departments are using, especially Minnesota. It's where we report all of our actual crimes that we can show that actually occurred. We don't create these categories. If you look at the categories in the annual report, some of them you're like, what are they even talking about? So it's a broad spectrum approach that matches statutes that are different in Wisconsin versus Minnesota versus North Dakota, and they put all these statutes into these buckets. So that's where this comes into play. So, I mean, if you look at these numbers, you know, assault offenses 32, theft offenses 92, other property offenses, that includes like burglaries and those type of things, 34, and that includes like a storage garage burglary as well, would be in there. Sex offenses 10, fraud 28, and the crimes of society, those are your drug offenses and those type of things is how they categorize that. If you think of the number of calls that we handle, over 4,000, and you look at how many of these are actually, you know, reportable crimes, I mean, I think anecdotally we're doing pretty well. You know, I think from a safety perspective, and people should feel safe in our community based on these numbers. I think
Better than where I work.
I'm pretty happy with those numbers. So, any general questions on this? Okay.
Nope.
Go ahead, Alex. Thank you. Just a quick highlight on some of the training that we worked on. We met at the beginning of the year and did a strategic planning process. A lot of really good engagement with that. Incorporated reality-based training this last year. Sent somebody to do a training to bring that back, where it's a methodology of training that is, you know, you're setting these scenarios up that are as real as possible, providing those realistic adult learning experiences for people to try things out. If they get halfway through it and realize I'm on the wrong path, you can stop, start over. The idea is to do these things in practice, hands-on, when they can practice, try new things. That's been really valuable as well. And we also are using a new tracking system to the post-board training mandates. They keep adding additional courses, you know, and different things that have to be done every 5 years, every 3 years, every 1 year. It's getting really complicated to track those things, and this system was designed to do that. So relatively cheap, a couple $100 that we spend on this every year just to try and track our training. Go ahead, Alex. These are the highlights of community outreach engagement for last year. You know, some of them are more larger scale. You know, one of the biggest ones that we do is the PEAK program at Wyoming Elementary. It's a large number of hours they would allocate an officer to spend with those students there. But it is I got to spend several days out there with them. It's a really cool program, seeing how they interact. You know, there's the content itself, which is interesting, but those relationships are why you do it. You know, it's not always about the content. Several Special Olympic events, and a couple Coffee with the Cop events. Overall, you know, we'd always like to see us expand these a little more. You know, looking for those opportunities to see where we can do additional community outreach events as we move along.
I just want to point out that you did not bring up the community roll call with the chief.
Yes.
You're doing a good job with that. Each one gets better and better.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So you didn't point
I'm
that out.
looking for a
I thought I
production
would.
company. If anybody wants to volunteer
No,
their
you're
time to
doing
do video production, that'd be great. No.
You're doing a great job.
Good.
It gets better all the time. I mean, it takes a while, right?
You know
to
what's
get
coming
used
up
to
in a
that.
couple weeks?
What?
420.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Those are the best on social media.
I can't wait to see that video that you're gonna do.
We'll see. Yep.
Do you have
Me
a-
too. I don't know.
Do you have a new joke?
I'm not sure yet. We'll see what we can come up with. We talked about it a little bit today. So we'll see. Got a couple weeks. Yeah. And the longevity of that, you know, this might be the last year because it's just not going to be funny anymore after
I was
this.
gonna actually say, if things keep progressing the way
Right.
they are at the Capitol, it might not be a joke anymore.
Go ahead, Alex, next one. This is just a visual representation. Sorry, it's hard to kind of see, but just a representation of what our staffing was for 2022. Just so we have that years and years down the road if we want to look back. So 12 full-time employees, no part-time. We have several reserves that dedicate a lot of their time to our department. They really help us out in incredible ways. We really appreciate the reserves that volunteer their time. But you can just see general overall, you have 2 patrol sergeants, 1 on each team, and then the investigator reports to one of the sergeants as well. So awesome staff, really good dedicated people. We're still working on replacing Allison Edwards, but this is just kind of visual representation for our staffing in 2022. I think that's the last slide. Any overall questions on that?
No.
If there are things that you'd like to see in future annual reports, be sure to let me know, and I can add those in too as well. So,
All right.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Good job. Number 13 on communication is water meter change-out projects. So, Mr. Keating, are you doing that, or is Mr. Linwood, or Mr. Linwood's
Yes,
gonna? I
I'll
don't
be-
know. I think Joe's
Mr.
looking like he's ready.
Mr. Keating certainly is involved in that project, but I'm just gonna give the council a brief update.
Yeah.
Summation about the program, but we will have more information coming out for the community, our upcoming newsletter, and then we will be sending out correspondence to residents. But just to give the council some context, you last year approved to move forward with the water change-out program with Ferguson Water Works. We will still be working towards this, and that project is gonna take about 4 to 5 months to do the complete city. All those meters will be newly installed and mostly made up in our residential area. We have replaced quite a few in the commercial industrial area at this point, but this is a significant upgrade to the previous system where Public Works, well, currently still is going out and reading meters. We are utilizing some of the new technology that we have, and that was where we put in that fixed network of meters, antennas, and radio equipment, where we have them on those on the water towers, and it's simply just taking that read electronically. So a significant time save. We did that back a few years ago in regards to those fixed antennas. Our water meters are coming to end of life. That's why we're doing this. It's necessary to do this. But this new water metering system will really, I think, be a benefit to the residents and to the city, where it will really be more accurate, and it also will help everyone identify those leaks. When we have the ability to flag systems and provide that information back to residents before they have a leak that goes on maybe for a month or 2 months, where there's protocols within the system where it will create letters, and then our utility billing clerk can send those out to residents or make contact with those people. I think one thing we've heard about too is, just so people know, there's no personal information about that resident account that it's transmitted at any time, because the water meter does not contain any data related to your account. It's simply just that water consumption. The central data collectors receive the water meter readings, and that is sent to our city server, and that's encrypted too, and that comes through there. It's stored in our city's utility billing database, and it's linked to that resident's account. There is no cost for the replacement to our residents, but it is a requirement to have their water meter replaced. So we don't have any water user fees that will be increased due to the project. I think that's something the council may know, but the public wants to know that. And then the combination of funds from the city's Water Reserve Fund and then our American Rescue Plan Act were utilized for the cost of the new meters and that installation. We opted to go with Ferguson Water Works for the project, as they were selected based on the experience as water meter installation contractor. And around the end of April, we'll start sending out letters. I should say will start sending out letters to all of our water customers, explaining that meter change out and how that will work. That letter to install that new water meter will explain that Ferguson Water Works will need to access the meter inside your home or business. The water meter should be clear and accessible. An adult 18 years older must be present at the time of installation. A 2-hour block of time will be scheduled, and then the installer will complete the meter installation work within the 2-hour framework. The installation, once on site, shouldn't take any more than an hour. So we will get that information out to residents. Ferguson, like I said again, was selected just based on their experience as a contractor. And all those installers will have identification, they'll wear uniforms, and they'll travel in marked vehicles and have completed background checks to ensure residents that we have a professional company and the individuals doing the work will be qualified and not have anything that would disqualify them from doing the work. There will be a letter that's sent out, so there's 2 ways that you'll be able to schedule that. That is a web address. There are people that like to use the electronic one, or there'll be a simple number that they can call and make that appointment with Ferguson. The appointments will be available Monday through Saturday, and we do anticipate right now the change out to begin sometime in May. As part of this later, Mr. Sachs will be going, as we reviewed our city water code, and there were some things to do some updating in the code just for some modern day practices, and then to facilitate the water meter out change out project, just to make sure that we had the ability to go forward with our change outs. So we did work on that, and Mr. Sachs will talk about that a little bit more. But this is kind of a high-level overview, just to give the council. We wanted, before those letters started coming out, just to give yourselves and the residents some information. Now, we are creating a website for this actually it's in our, I believe it has not maybe been activated yet, but it is done, and it will be sent out. We have that, like I said, that story in our newsletter, they'll be sent out as well. So residents will have the opportunity to look at that. We have one final meeting with Ferguson to just work out a few more details, and then we'll have that portion of the website up for residents to review.
All right, I have several questions.
Okay.
If somebody isn't home, they're at work, whatever, what is the process for that, for them to come in? How do they get in? How do they get access?
They have
into
to
the
have someone
house?
home. They have to.
They
have
will
someone
have to have
home.
someone
They have
home.
to have someone home.
So they'll
that's
have to
why-
take time off of work or
Potentially-
schedule for Saturday.
Correct. Yep.
And how many can they do, let's say, on a Saturday? So I'm just envisioning quite a few people maybe on Saturdays.
Right. I don't know exactly how large the crews will be with this 4 to 5 month, the turnaround time. I don't know the exact number. I know that the Saturday always is a popular one, but we'll need to work because the Saturday appointments do fill up quickly. But I know that in other cities they say that they actually get some pretty good participation during the week too. But you're right. I'm sure there are people that want to utilize that Saturday for work purposes.
Okay, and is it like from 8 to 5:30 or 8 to 8?
I think I think approximately 8 to 6 right now is what we're looking at.
Okay, and then by doing this, we know one of the benefits is to the residents in terms of if there's a leak in their house, we're gonna be able to know it and hopefully save them some money.
Absolutely, to be able to flag that, correct.
Yeah, and when they're on vacation, that sort of thing, we're gonna be able to really make sure everything's fine, nothing's
Correct,
flooding.
I think that's, and I think we did have that actually happen once this winter where we had someone that was a snowbird that had activity that was able to get a hold of them, and they sent someone over to check what was going on.
Okay, and then in return, it should also help the city as well, being able to know what we're using and for budgeting purposes
Correct, and I
stuff.
think there's a streamlining a process where we had more personnel going out to read those and have to do rereads and things like that. So this really is the investment that we've made in putting those fixed antennas up and be able to read those meters really will streamline this process.
Okay, and the return on investment basically in about a year, or, I
I
mean,
believe so. I'd have to look back at I know Ferguson had done when we approved these with Ferguson. I don't have that
Yeah, I don't remember.
in
I
front of
was-
me, but it was fairly quick in regards to the meters and the time frame on this to reference. I can
no, that's
pull
fine.
it back up.
Yeah, that's fine. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, Member Yeager, any questions?
So while this is happening, there will be no water.
For the duration of they're in the home, right, correct. They'll have to, they'll have to turn the water off briefly and then remove the existing meter and put the new one in.
And then will there be like brown water and crap in it?
Shouldn't be much sediment. I would anticipate, Mr. Ketting, I don't think for a change out, would you anticipate much?
For the most part, no. I would imagine that, excuse me, they do flush a lower laundry tub or something along those lines if they do suspect there's an area. I actually have quite a bit of experience changing out water meters. Usually I would run a little bit of water out from the street side just to make sure there's nothing that was held behind by a stuck meter. You know, anything from sand to shavings of plastic or whatever, if it's a plastic main. Those things do fold in there, it's a quick flush, usually takes care of it.
And I just don't want anybody coming back after they had their water meter replaced and then getting a call saying, oh my God, my water's brown.
Yeah, right, when they go in, they're going to shut off both valves, so you're going to be maintaining pressure throughout the house, not a full 55 or 60 PSI, but it's not going to drain out your entire system. If you were to have a chunk of pipe replaced in the kitchen, you're gonna lose that pressure in your system, and you'll be much more likely to see that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Member Schilling?
No questions.
Okay. Member Onstad?
No questions.
All right, so we can move on from there. You don't need anything else? All right, new business, finally. So, all right, new business, number 14. To approve an agreement between the City of Wyoming and the Lake Center for Youth and Families for 2023 We'll have a presentation by Linda Matson, Executive Director for Lake Center for Youth and Family. Ms. Matson, thank you for coming in, and we probably could have put you a little bit earlier, so I hope you don't mind.
It's just fine, thank you. Well, thank you, Mayor Iverson, council members and staff, for the opportunity to be here this evening and to present. I've certainly been here before, and I know others before me have as well. So just as a reminder that Lake Center for Youth and Families has been around since 1976, and it was Jim Trudeau, who was the Forest Lake chief and also the Washington County Sheriff, that decided at that time that we should have an organization that would not ignore minor offenses, but also wouldn't send those youth to court. So there should be something in the middle. And so that's what he and leaders in the area started, and we still do that today. That program has continued on. And so you have in your packet our annual report, and you can certainly look at that, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. But I'm just gonna hit a couple of the highlights, and we have 3 program areas at Lake Center, and one is enrichment, and that is a program that's after school for students that are in certain elementary schools in Chisago County. And then we also have the safety camp, which is held in Forest Lake and has been for many, many years. Intervention, as I mentioned, has been there from the beginning and continues today. We have contracts with Chisago County and with Washington County, so we get referrals from them, as well as the Forest Lake Police Department as well. We also have another intervention program that's funded through a grant, and that full-time staff member works at Linwood Elementary, which is part of the Forest Lake school system. And we've taken the intervention piece and taken it the step before to prevention. So she is there working with staff. So it might be the principal, it might be the counselor, it might be at the playground. If any of you have ever been in an elementary school, the playground is one place where there could be some conflict. In the cafeteria, in particular classrooms, and it might be working with the teacher to give that teacher ideas on maybe some potential problems that might be there, or it might be working directly with the students. So she is there full-time and has done a fantastic job, and we're hoping to renew that grant for 2 more years, actually this summer. And then we have counseling, and counseling is probably the newest component, and that started probably 7 years ago with 1 counselor, and now we are at 6. And these are licensed therapists. We see clients in our office in Forest Lake. If you're not familiar where we're located, it's at the roundabout where the old bakery. If I say the old bakery, most people know where that is. In the town square building. And then we see them via Zoom through a secure link, and then also in the schools. We have an interagency agreement with Forest Lake area schools. So we have therapists that go into the school provides a space. Our therapist meets with that student, and then they go back to class, and usually our therapists are there for at least half a day or a full day. So that is the programming that we have. And also I would point out in that annual report that our board of directors is listed there, and we have an extremely strong board of directors. Most of them have been there for many years. During COVID, we had challenges like all nonprofits did, or many nonprofits did. And we've had challenges along the way as we continue to grow and also need to continue to fund, et cetera. And I can't say enough about how supportive that board is. Chief Bauer also serves on our board, and we're very thankful he's part of that. Also, another document you have is some demographics, and I'm just going to point out, and you can certainly look at them, and again, if you have questions, happy to answer them. The enrichment programming, you will see that from the city of Wyoming, there were less than 5 that participated in enrichment. The reason for that is that there are, my guess is, there are particular students that, where we have the after-school program that's for free, that are in North Branch, Rush City, et cetera. So they're farther north, they're not located right here in the city of Wyoming, or at Wyoming Elementary. The intervention data, we have 188 clients total in 2022 with 383 sessions. So what typically happens is you do our intervention manager does an intake, talks to the youth as well as the parent and guardian, has some conversation about what is it that happened. So it might be an apology letter, it might be paying for something that they possibly destroyed, various things. So it's kind of, it might be a class that they would take. So it depends on what happens, what they would do. So it's more than one session, which is why the numbers are that way. And in the city of Wyoming, there were 35 youth that participated in that program that were referred likely from Chisago County or from the Forest Lake Police Department, because we have liaisons in the school and they can refer directly to us. And then the counseling data, we had 166 clients in 2022 for 2,446 sessions. So, of course, with counseling, it's not just typically, it's not just one time, and it can be over a few weeks, months, or years that clients stay with us. And from Wyoming, there were 30 community members. So that could have been young children. We see children as young as 3, and we see adults into their 70s and 80s. So those are the breakdown and the demographics, and you can see the other communities there as well, but that's specific to Wyoming. On the last page of our annual report, you will see the contributions that people have given, and thank you to the City of Wyoming for contributing in the past. Certainly appreciate that. And I will say that as you look at our annual report, we work hard to get money from many sources. So we don't have anything that comes directly from the government, et cetera. So it is various fundraising. So we have charitable gaming. We talk to municipalities and they support us. We bill for insurance. We write many grants. We have contributions from businesses, from individuals. So there are many ways in which we are contracts with counties. So there are many ways in which we are putting together our revenue each year. So your support and your help with that is truly appreciated for all of that programming that happens at Lake Center. With that, Chief Bauer, is there anything you wish to add, or?
Sure. As Linda mentioned, being on the board of directors, I have a lot of experience with Youth Service Bureau in Washington County, and now being up here with Lake Center, I recognize how valuable these organizations are, and seeing that we're number 2 in both counseling and intervention, it's definitely a service that our community uses. It's a great way for us to find opportunities when you have these juveniles that are just entering into potentially the criminal justice system, and this is a really good way to prevent that from being something that carries forward with them. So and it gets them the help that they need. Those assessments that are done on the front end are really important to find out what else is going on, and the criminal justice system doesn't have the ability to do that. So very valuable program and organization in our community.
I would say too, to add to that, we do look at, the counties ask us to track, and they help us track youth that reoffend within a year. So we don't go beyond a year, but within a year. And really over time, it's been very close since 1976, very close to 80% almost every year that do not reoffend within that year.
Perfect. Any questions?
No, I have no questions.
No questions.
All right. Ms. Mattson, would you like to give a little plug, or do you want me to for the taste, which is one of my favorite events?
Yes.
So I can give a plug, or you can, whatever you want to do.
You do have a flyer there for 2 events. One is the shredding event that is at Empire Insurance in Wyoming, and they have done that for many years. And you can bring your shredding, and you can, and then they make a donation for every box or every bag of shredding that's brought in. And then, yes, the taste this year, I would say, is at the Scandia Creamery, which is a new location for us. And Mayor Iverson, I'll let you talk about
I just,
taste.
you know what, I've worked on the Taste. I was one of the founding members of the Taste. I can't remember how many years ago. But it's just really a super fun event. I know that it raises good money for the center. And I can't say enough about it. I think everybody should go. I know Chief Bauer was there last year. It was probably that was your first time there.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, so, and as long as you keep having Autumn Woods
Oh,
Dairy there.
I mean, the chocolate milk, I mean.
I know. I was gonna say that, and Keys is always my favorite, but those two. So just really appreciate that that's still happening, and then also the shredded event too. I think is super important. So really appreciate that, and you'll see me there. So
Great,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the agreement between the City of Wyoming and Lake Center for the Youth and Families for 2023. I will make the first motion. Do we have a second?
Second. Oh,
We need an amount.
Correct, we would need
Oh, you wanna
You need an amount, and you
Isn't it
also
on there?
need where it's coming from. Last year,
oh, that's right.
we did $2,500 out of Fund 208, the Police Supplemental Fund. I have no problems with doing the same thing. So if you would like to amend your motion to.
I'm gonna stop that right there. How much is in the fund?
I don't know that I can access that right now.
Do we know?
According
I
to your
don't-
budget, you have according to the paperwork from the 2023 budget, you had $12,000, over $12,000. You have a debit for the last couple of years for contracted services in the amount of $2,500.
Correct.
I just don't believe that donations should come out of the general tax fund. And that's why I support giving a donation, even if you want to increase it from $2,500, but out of the police supplemental fund.
I would like to see an increase in that, but I just want to know what you're comfortable with and what's in there. So I'd like to see
Oh.
$3,000
Yep.
in there, if that's something that
That
will
was
fit
what
in
I
there.
was hoping for, yep.
Okay, we all know the cost of everything goes higher, so
Correct.
I'd like to make the motion for $3,000 coming out of the police
Correct.
Supplemental.
supplemental fund for the agreement with the Lake Center for Youth and Families for 2023. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Schilling, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. All right, thank you for that catch, member Yeager. All right, number 15, to consider ordinance 2023-01, an ordinance amending the City of Wyoming Code of Ordinances, Chapter 36 Utilities, Article 2 Water. Mr. Linwood?
Mr. Sacks.
I'll be taking
Oh.
that, Madam Mayor.
Oh, all right.
Thank you. So as Mr. Linwood